January 11th, 2016, FWC Witch Hunt. Public Records Request W03-1112-092915. Lieutenant Lauren Lowers called me just now and said the reason the cost, and this was for copies that I was asking for, is so high, $10,153.35, is that there are 1,142 emails and over 12,000 trackers with my search terms in it during that year-and-a-half span. Trackers are what they call each interaction on a subject. He said they have to redact everything that is sensitive information, so that's why the fee is so high. He says they can only charge based upon the hourly rate of the lowest paid person in the agency, which is $10 an hour. I'm inclined to make them do it, just so they think twice before discussing us again. Clearly, they don't want us to have this information. I asked him how the bad guys managed to get their hands on the wrong version of their witch hunt. Of course, I didn't call it a witch hunt. And he said that it was on their SharePoint as both the original and the corrected version. So when someone asked for that report specifically, they got both. He further explained that because they got it by email, there are now 4 copies of it that would come up in search. 2 copies of the original and 2 copies of the corrected one. So obviously this didn't make any sense. So I just went in, today's date is December 16th of 2021, and put in this future note so that this makes sense going forward. It occurs to me as I'm reading this that I never wrote about what it was the bad guys got their hands on from November 7th of 2014. This was our rebuttal to the Florida Wildlife Commission, and they corrected their report to accurately report that we were not in violation, despite them having characterized us as being so in their first report. I would also like to point out that the FWC has figured out who the bad guys really are and has stopped harassing us on their behalf. The exotic animal exploiters who attack Big Cat Rescue online due to our efforts to end the mistreatment of exotic animals in private hands have posted an inspection by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the FWC, conducted on November 7th of 2014. This was a very unusual inspection in which 3 officials went in different directions and spent 6 hours each examining the sanctuary in extraordinary detail. The version of the report the attackers have reported was the initial report, which erroneously characterized their observations as violations. The final report, which the attackers also have, but of course chose not to publish, clearly stated that none of the findings were violations. They were recommendations for maintenance, which, if they were not attended to, at some point could become violations. See the final language below. And then in their final language, they added, listed discrepancies are recommendations and not a violation, but if not corrected in a timely manner, can lead to one. At the time of inspection, no discrepancies/recommendations listed in this report provided any hazards or safety concerns relating to the activity of exhibiting to the public. The recommendations were primarily items that are dealt with in our normal ongoing maintenance of the sanctuary. All were addressed in a timely fashion. A USDA inspection found, as usual, no violation, and the next FWC inspection found no violations. Big Cat Rescue has a near-perfect inspection record over the years and never had any comment by any official that related to care of the animals. The report noted some areas that showed signs of rust. We live in humid Florida, and some rust is a fact of life. We deter rust using brown Rust-Oleum paint, and we repaint our cages on an ongoing regular maintenance program. The attackers, who have no regard at all for the truth, falsely post repeatedly that the brown color of the Rust-Oleum on the cage wire is all rust. One refers to Big Cat Rescue as a jungle of rust. If all the cages were totally rust like the lies of the attackers claim, don't you think the FWC would have noted that? Rust is, in fact, not a violation of any rule. The relevant rule is that the cages must meet certain strength requirements. This makes perfect sense. The cages have to be strong enough to contain powerful animals. The concern with rust is that if you use the minimum gauge wire and it rusts, the strength could diminish below the minimum requirement. That is why Big Cat Rescue uses cage wire that is in far excess of the minimum. Even with minimal amount of rust that may appear before the next painting cycle, our cages far exceed the required strength. One of the inspectors commented that he was not an engineer and had no way to know if some rust brought down the wire below the strength standard. So we assisted the Florida Wildlife Commission to remove any uncertainty by having an engineer test one of our older cages that is right by the lake, so it is most exposed to the moisture and had been through repeated cycles of having any rust scraped off and being repainted. The engineer pulled on the cage with a bobcat machine with a tension gauge connected to the chain that the bobcat pulled. As you can see in the video below, the cage far exceeded the required strength. The individual who posted the erroneous initial report had in his possession the final report stating that there were no violations. But, of course, he knowingly posted the incorrect initial report and falsely claimed that there were dozens of violations. Then, others in the small band of animal exploiters who constantly attack Big Cat Rescue picked up the same false information. Big Cat Rescue is the leader in working to end the private ownership of big cats by individuals and roadside zoos. The animal abusers and exploiters have no arguments to justify their selfish mistreatment of animals, so their only recourse is to try and discredit Big Cat Rescue. And the only way they can do that is with lies. Posting the incorrect version of the FWC report and falsely claiming it contained violations is just one more of their lies.